If you just get that right, it's pretty good.
Exactly.
Martin is with me again. Martin, former schoolmaster, now retired, lifelong devotee of the world and the discipline of judo. And I was asking Martin just a moment, by the way, you're welcome, as you know.
Thank you.
Asking Martin just a moment ago if he ever met a new Jack Mackin, because I had Jack's son, Kieran, in here yesterday, the headmaster out at the Meadow. And he was with me yesterday. I didn't know, and I was able to tell him how wonderful a man Jack was. You have good memories of him.
I was in the Bosco from about 1966 or thereabouts, and Jack was in charge of the Bosco then.
Yes.
And young lads then, very tough lads from that part of the town, and they all looked up to him. He was a role model.
Yeah.
He actually managed. Can you imagine today getting a gang of lads in and having the rosary every evening?
How would you do it?
No,
you wouldn't do it.
And he managed to do that.
Yeah. But he was just a total zealot. He totally dedicated to the youth of the town.
Yeah.
Now we're heading into the Christmas time. It's just around the corner. Yeah. And we have various memories of Christmas and what we did then. What about Martin Savage, the teacher, the man who had become a judo master? Looking back on childhood and Christmas childhoods, what stands out for you?
Funny, the thing that sounds and smells.
Sounds and smells.
Sounds and smells. Obviously, the smell of cooking.
The smells and bells.
Yep. Yes.
So to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a better way of putting
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you're poetic and into literature. And
that's why I'm no good at judo and can't, and still don't know the reason for algebra. I tell you. Someone actually once told me that algebra was the poetry of mathematics.
It is.
Do you see the way he agreed so quickly?
It simplifies everything.
But how does that mean? You're a mathematician. What does that mean? What problem can I solve by using algebra?
It's probably simple things easier to solve just intuitively. You've got an intuitive thing for it. Yeah. I think, but when things get very complicated, when you're dealing with lots of different factors, right, you do need algebra. It'd be impossible to keep track of it otherwise. Absolutely impossible.
I just do.
But for everyday thinking, intuition works best. In fact, for everyday thinking, I would sort of use intuition myself rather than algebra.
Do you feel that there, before we go back to the Christmas thing, that we digressed there in algebra, but do you think there are scientific and mathematical brains and artistic and creative brains?
Everybody has two sides to the brain, obviously. On one side, obviously, being artistic, on the other side being, logical.
Yes.
I think one side becomes more developed than the other in certain societies.
Yeah.
Going back to the Japanese thing, Japanese people are inclined to think more with the other side of their brain than we do.
And the other side, that side you're talking about is what? What does that side of the brain specialize in? I
think probably intuitive in a sense. There's a different way of I don't know an awful lot about it, to be honest, but certainly I know we are inclined to be more logical and rational in our thinking.
Does the Japanese person follow his heart more easily? Maybe.
If you want to put it that way, you talk about following your heart, well, that's just an expression. What exactly does it mean? Does it mean following an intuition that you have, an idea that you have in your head? Probably, yeah.
That's what they do. So back to Christmas.
Yes.
And the Christmas as you remember, your bells and your smells.
Yes.
Where was Christmas for Martin Savage?
Well, we lived in Quay Street.
Quay Street.
You know what Quay Street is?
Quay Street, I do. Where exactly is it?
It's where Lily
down beside Boat Street.
Yes, between Kilmurray Street and Boat Street.
Yeah. And it's between the two, and between Kilmurray Street and Boat Street and the Warrenpoint Road.
Exactly. Yes.
And Lily's shop's on the corner.
Lily's shop's on the corner. It used to be Tommy Burns' shop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, we lived there about halfway down that street, and I was there I was born there. Was there probably until I was in my mid to late 20s. Yeah, and in those days, you had the two big meals of the year were Christmas and Easter.
Aye.
And you ate well those times, and you can remember smells like the ham and the turkey and the chicken and that type of thing. Nowadays it's Christmas every day. It's like Slade. I wish it could be Christmas, or not Slade, Wizard, right?
Yeah.
I wish it could be Christmas, and it is. And in that sense, it's been diluted, I think.
Absolutely, without a doubt. It's funny you mentioned Tommy Burns' shop there.
Yeah.
I immediately thought you were wrong. But because I remembered Tommy Burns' shop being the satellite.
Oh, Tommy had the
where
satellite.
Mr. O'Hare's bike shop is today.
Exactly.
And next to Charlie McGrath, the barbers.
Charlie, yeah.
And then suddenly I remembered,
Yeah.
he was down there.
He was indeed.
on King.
Tommy was there. And then Tommy Rocks was there after him.
Tommy Rocks was there afterwards.
Yeah.
And up on the other corner, there was the O'Hare family. They had a wee shop there. Dan O'Hare and George O'Hare. He was into the Knights of Malta and
That's right.
spouting and all the rest of it.
George
Yeah.
O'Hare. I
George
didn't know him, but I knew
Yeah,
of
but
him.
you knew of the shop
Yeah, I
that
knew
was
of him,
there.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
they moved
yeah,
from
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. So Christmases have changed, I rather think. We don't really need anything, but nevertheless we get everything.
We seem to.
Which
And
is an awful thing.
And it becomes more difficult to find things for people because everybody's capable now. Or
Yeah.
you're talking about austerity, but it's hard to see it in places because everybody's buying.
Yeah. How are you on the papers today? I'm just
haven't-
having a look at
Yeah.
some of the things that are there.
Yeah.
One of the things, and we can discuss it maybe before we get heavily into Japan, my column today in the paper, it talks really about landlordism in Dublin and in Newry, where
Okay.
people are being really traumatized over what's been expected of them, what they want to pay. And then I recall that fundamentally people are good. And I look back on the story of Maximilian Kolbe, who became a saint in the Catholic Church. He was the man, he was a Franciscan friar who gave himself for a stranger in the concentration camp.
Yes.
Rolled up his sleeve and took the injection of carbolic acid to kill him. That's what they did to him. And that was in the Nazi regime. So the friar, Maximilian Kolbe, was sacrificial of himself for somebody else. Is there that kind of thing in the Japanese that you know of? Will they put themselves in harm's way for another person?
Well, you asked this last week in relation to Fukushima.
Yes.
And certainly people, they have done there, they've gone into
that's-
Fukushima
yes.
and they were aware
I mean,
that
to
was-
remind the people, Fukushima was the nuclear reactor that went into meltdown.
Yes, and apparently it's still not sorted out because there's a very strong traces of radiation in the sea off the coast,
Yes.
off that coast of Japan. But certainly there were scientists who put themselves at risk and knew they were putting themselves at risk, and some have died as a consequence of that. Yeah. So I don't know how widespread it is, but certainly.
But you've certainly noticed in
Yeah,
Japan,
yeah,
you told
yeah,
me about
yeah,
this,
yeah.
you've noticed in Japan that people will come up to you and engage with you and speak to you
Exactly.
and ask you, do you need help? Does
well,
it go that far?
Absolutely. On one particular instance, this was probably the greatest case of it, I suppose, in a sense, was I got onto a train to go, it was the tube, the Tokyo underground system, and got onto a train and asked, was this train going to such and such a place? I can't remember where it was. And this guy on the train says no, right? So he got off the train and he took me across the other side of the station, which was...
My goodness.
Now, ran the risk of missing his own train, but of course, Japanese trains run so frequently, it probably
Yeah,
wasn't such
it
a
was
hardship. But
okay.
even so, for somebody to go off their train, take you across the far side of the station, put you on the right platform, put you into the right train, and then go back in. Yeah.
It's an amazing philosophy, and what you do in your modern judo in the beginning here in the 21st century in Ireland, you have people coming to you. Are you sensing that younger people are absorbing the philosophy and the discipline and the goodness of the judo way as easily and readily as you and your colleagues did in your Bosco days with Jack Mackin standing in the corner?
I don't think, to be honest, I don't think we did in those days. I think we were obviously drawn to judo for whatever reason, but I think we saw it in different terms then. We saw it as purely as a physicality.
Yeah.
We didn't get into the spiritual or philosophical
No,
aspect
you
of
wouldn't
it.
have done.
And young kids today are exactly the same. They don't get into that at all. It's later on that they begin to, maybe if they stay at it long enough, they begin to realise there's more to this than just wrestling around on the floor with somebody.
But wrestling around on the floor, and this is hugely important. Well, boxing I'm not as keen, I wouldn't be as keen on, because it's that physicality of the thump on the head.
Yes.
That in anybody's language doesn't make sense.
It's violence.
It is violence.
It is violence. It certainly
But
is.
in the business of judo, I sense you have this development of huge self-confidence, that you walk taller as a consequence of what you do, because you know that in any situation, you in all probability will make a fair fist of dealing with it.
Yeah. I think certainly in judo there's what we call a temiwaza, which are striking techniques,
Yes.
which aren't used in competition, right?
Yes.
For the very reason that you just said, because they are dangerous, they are violent, but they are certainly there for self-defense. There comes a time in lots of self-defense situations where you will have to hit somebody.
Yes.
Right? That simply maybe trying to hold them or talk them out of it won't be sufficient. Right? So the striking techniques are there, but they're not there as part of the sport end of judo in sense, because it is recognised that they are dangerous. They are dangerous, but it's also recognised that they are a necessity.
Yeah.
Right? But it's something not to be used generally.
Yeah, in a world that is jungle by definition and character, you will need to do these things occasionally.
At times, yes.
At times,
yes.
And we had it. We look at restraints. That situation in New York where the police officer put the fellow in the headlock.
Yes.
And
Did you see that?
I did. It
Yes,
was
it was pretty horrendous.
Yeah. Would your take on been on that he had behaved abominably and that he should not have done it? Because you don't have the whole details.
You don't
It's
have full
hard to
detail.
know.
I know from my point of view, from doing judo, that it's very, very easy to put a stranglehold on somebody or a chokehold. In that case, it was probably a stranglehold. There's a difference between a strangle and a choke.
What is that?
Well, a choke goes across your windpipe.
Ah, yeah.
And it's extremely painful.
Yeah.
And you know you're being choked.
Yeah.
Right. Strangle's inclined to cut off the blood going to the brain from the carotid artery.
So you're blocking the artery.
And you don't realise that it's not particularly painful. 1 minute you're fully aware of what's going on, and the next minute you're just out. Now, if that's kept on for any longer,
you die.
You are, because your brain's going to be starved of blood and oxygen, right? And as a judoka, and I've been at judo for so long, you realise the dangers of that. And even so, there'll be times I'd be demonstrating strangles on people in the dojo, and I'm inclined in the middle of a strangle to stop and talk and explain something. And sometimes you forget that the strangle's on, and the guy's, stop. But sometimes, because it's been on and he hasn't realised he's going out, you might find him a bit woozy afterwards because he's forgotten to tap. He hasn't realised that the strangle's on. Now, I think that possibly happened in this case, right?
Yeah.
But the policeman he was a big, strong policeman who was putting it on. He should really, if he's been trained properly, he should have been aware of what the consequences were of his actions.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. The notion of judo, the gentle end of judo, which is the discipline of the appreciation of the chrysanthemum, so to speak.
Yes.
It's the steel fist kind of thing in the velvet glove.
Yeah.
And that chrysanthemum notion, that philosophy of the steel fist in the velvet glove, it finds its origin where? Is it coming through the samurai tradition or what?
I think it existed before the samurai.
Really?
Again, my knowledge of things Japanese is peripheral. I haven't gone into it in any great detail, but I think it pre-existed. Samurai, right? People think of samurai as being warriors, right? But actually, it means to serve, right? Okay, the idea of bushido and samurai, it was relation to serving a master.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily by being a warrior, right? Although that was obviously part of it, right? The chrysanthem sword came because the samurai were, they absorbed themselves in other aspects of life apart from just the warrior.
Yes.
So they were into calligraphy,
Wow.
tea ceremony, that type of thing. Different ways of reaching, how would you put it, spiritual enlightenment, if you like.
Yes.
Through the activities that they involve themselves in. And they found things like calligraphy and literature and tea ceremony being very, it concentrated their minds, in a sense.
It almost takes us back to the notion of Ireland, the island of saints and scholars.
Yes, it's similar.
It was there in that.
Yes, you had the bards and
the
you
bards
had
and all of that.
Yes, exactly.
So Christmas Bacons, will we see you next week?
I'll be here next week.
That's good. I look forward to that.
No,
No, we obviously missed because we're sitting at complete variance to each other. That's not good.
Yeah.
There's no sort of gentle kind of cohesion there at all. But we'll get over that. We'll get this right.
we didn't think today at all.
No, we certainly swam. There's no two ways about it. Taking a break, back with you presently.
Destination Newry. We're back in moments.
OSM Engineering, Chancellors Road, Newry. specialising in PLC programs, electrical control systems and supplies, electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic and mechanical maintenance. Vast range of electrical